Okay. Hello everybody. Why is that there? Um, okay. Get everything working. So, I just wanted to start with thank you to everybody who watched the last video and the people who commented and said nice things. It makes me feel a lot less shy about making these kinds of things. So that's always nice. But another thing is that I made a community post thingy. I don't know how many people saw it, but basically, I want to do this thing like, the weekly slap. I want to do this thing where, if you got something you need to talk about or need advice about something, if that makes sense, you could just email me. And I mean, I don't know who you are, but when I read it out, I'll make sure to keep you anonymous and I'll talk about it and I'll give my thoughts and opinions. So if that sounds intriguing to you, if you are in a situation or you just need some advice about something, I'm more of a listener than a talker, I guess. So it might be nice to have someone hear you, I guess. But this is my email. Oops, I keep clicking slash. Pretty sure that's it. I'll put it in the description, but that's it. So, yeah, email me. But today I mainly want to talk about my family, or not so much my family, but more so my life experiences. And I'm probably gonna get a little off track like I usually do, but I'm gonna try to keep it as on topic as possible. But I just want to preface this by saying that I love everyone in my family, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad or I don't want people to think negatively of my family members, if that makes sense. Because I know none of my family members are probably gonna see this. Hopefully, that's the hope. But yeah. So I was born in Arizona. My mom and my dad had been together for about maybe a year. But before I was born, so not very long before my mom actually found out she was pregnant. My mom's a real character, as I'll discuss later, but she's got some issues, and I think that was kind of apparent to my dad as soon as he met her. I'm not completely sure on the story here, but from what I remember hearing, my mother almost never told my dad about me, which the only reason that she ended up doing that and telling him is because of my grandpa, like her her dad. He didn't think it was fair for her to not tell him something so important like that. But Yeah, I mean, already before I was even born, they were having issues. And then I lived in Arizona until I was about 1 years old. And then I moved to Kansas. And my dad got an apartment. And we moved there. And I lived in that apartment until I was about 8. And the thing about living in the apartment was that I lived right next to my cousins. Well, two of them. And they're younger, but not by very much, so it wasn't that big of a difference. And it almost felt like having siblings because I would just see them so often and talk to them so much. But the things that I remember most were the arguments and stuff. I think one of my first memories that I have, my earliest memories, is just my mom arguing with my dad. And she would always argue for dumb reasons. I think she kind of did it on purpose to provoke him. Because my dad was the only one who ever worked. My mom, she babysat from time to time, but that wasn't really the breadwinner, I guess. It was my dad. And he was, at the time, a manager at Chipotle, which was pretty decent pay, but one thing I remember is that he hated it. And he would come home and he would go to sleep on the couch because he was tired. And my mom was not kind to him. She would try to find something to get mad at, whether it was him leaving his shoes out or just him sleeping or him drinking beer, which he would only drink because, I mean, who would want to deal with her, right? But there's always something. And I've always loved my dad, but there was a time where my mom always tried to justify those things that she would do. And, since I barely saw my dad, it was the truth for me. Did I ever really believe her? Not necessarily. I never once hated my dad or thought he was a bad person. I was always happy to spend time with him. But it got to the point where I wasn't even allowed to hang out with him alone. She wouldn't let us go to the store together. She wouldn't let us do anything really unless she was there. And whatever reason it would be, it never made sense to me because the ultimate reason is just that she wanted control over the situation. Like she usually always has. But guys, give me a second. Okay. It's back. Okay, where was I? Yeah. My mom never really let me do things with my dad. And they would argue all the time. And it wasn't really arguing, because that implies that it was two-sided. It was mainly just my mom, I don't know, torturing my dad, for lack of better words. Um, Sorry about that again. Um, Anyways, but yeah, the arguments would happen a lot. And my mom was a cruel person. I guess that I should go in depth about the things that she did to me and my dad. Like I said before, I love my mom. She taught me a lot of things. She taught me how to be a good person and such. Whether she actually practiced that is another story. But I know that she taught me. So that's what matters in my book. And she wouldn't hit me a lot, I guess. I don't know if hit's the right word, but she's an angry person, and sometimes she would hit me, but like a slap, and sometimes she would pinch me really hard. And I was only less than 8 years old at that point, so it wasn't exactly the most pleasant thing. And it's not like I was the only one she hit. She'd hit my dad too, which my dad is a grown man. He could easily have fought back if he wanted to, but he never did because he's not like that. So she would just be a little bit violent like that. And I remember one time my dad decided to spank me so she wouldn't, because he knows how like bad she can be sometimes. I think it ended up hurting more, but his heart was in the right place, I guess. And um there's another time where I knew she was going to hit me, so I went to my dad's room, or my parents' room, where my dad was, and he was sleeping. And I asked him to make sure she wouldn't hit me, and he said yeah, but he was sleeping. So then she came in, and she hit him really hard with a back scratcher. And he got upset, obviously, but she would just do things like that. And I never understood why. And what she did to my dad was worse. She would call his work and accuse him of being with other women, which he never was. Somehow. I don't know how, but he was always loyal to her. And he would call my Tio, my uncle, since they went to work at the same place. And she would tell him to come pick up his kids, which were my cousins. And she would watch him sometimes. But whenever she got mad at my dad, she would tell my Tio to come pick up his kids. And he'd leave work, come to the apartments, and my mom would be like, "Oh, I was just kidding." And she would do things like that all the time to whatever family was over, just because she was mad at my dad. She would call my grandma and my tia pretty vile things all the time, like bitches and old lady. Like, it was just terrible things. Not even because she was mad at them, but because she wanted to hurt my dad. And why did she do all this? Like, that was my question. And I guess, well, there's a technical answer for that, even if it's not a very good one. My mom, whenever she was a little girl, she got hit by a car. And, I mean, it physically disabled her, but from what I understand, it also affected a part of her brain. I don't know what part of her brain, but I know she was in a coma for months. I don't know how long, maybe it was longer than months, but she had to relearn how to do everything. And it affected her personality. I don't think that's justification, but I think she's just genuinely like a narcissist, and it's very hard to live with someone like that and to try to confide in someone like that, because ultimately all she ever really wanted was whatever benefited her. And I guess I should continue, but what else? Oh, one time she was very upset about something. Stupid, obviously, but she wanted to get my dad arrested. So she tried to provoke him into hitting her, which he didn't. And then she called the cops, and the cops ended up arresting her. Dad still went and picked her up from the jail. She only stayed overnight, but still, that's just the kind of stuff she would do. And then everything would go back to normal not too long after. And it was just a weird environment for me to be raised in. And there was a whole lot of drama between the time I was 1 and 8. Stuff I remember, stuff I don't remember. But then, eventually, whenever I was 8 or so, she wanted to move to Arizona. And not for any good reason, obviously. But she told me and my dad that it was a vacation. I think my dad knew better at the time, but there wasn't really much he could do. So he let us go. And so that was loud. On the plane to Arizona, she told me that I was never going to see my dad again. And I just remember being so scared. Like, the person in front of me, my mother, was a stranger. It was not a good feeling. And then, whenever we did get to Arizona, we stayed with her cousin for a bit. And then her half-sister, my tia Susan, I guess. Even though she was not Mexican. Maybe she was. I don't remember. But we stayed with her for a bit. My mom argued with her per usual. And then my dad moved down. Since she pretty much took everything whenever she left. He lost our car that he was renting. He lost our apartment. Well, he just moved out of that, but so he came down to Phoenix and to live with my grandma and my tia, who were just about the only family he had over there. And my mom let me see him, and it wasn't long before I was living, instead of with my tia Susan, I was living with my mom's mom and her brother, my tia Johnny. And that wasn't good either, because they really like drugs in that house. Not heavy drugs to my knowledge, but weed. I always smelled the smell of weed. And people, strangers coming by to smoke or to buy or to sell or whatever. And keep in mind, I was only 8 or 9 when this was happening. So, I pretty much just dealt with that for a while. Until one day, in the elementary school I was enrolled in. Oh, fuck. This is bad. I was enrolled in elementary school. And they forgot to pick me up. Like, I think I stayed in the office until the school closed, and then they were calling and calling to come pick me up. But no one did like they were supposed to. So eventually my dad walked. I think he was with my mom, but he walked over because he didn't have a car. And he went to go get me, and my tia called us an Uber. And then when we got back to my mom's, I decided I didn't want to be there anymore. So I was just like, can't I just go with you, Dad? And since they both technically had equal custody of me, I went with him, and my mom was obviously upset and angry with me, and angry with my dad more so. But it was really nice living with him instead of her. And then started the whole saga of whenever she wanted to get me back, she would call the police and say that I was being abused or I was being whatever. So the cops would come. Oh my god. Holy shit, wait. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyways, the cops would come. They'd see that I was perfectly fine. They would leave. And this happened almost every day. And there was a time I remember vividly where my dad was going to get a restraining order on my mom on my behalf, which meant that she would legally not be allowed to come near me. Then he decided that was not good. That was not nice, so he didn't do it. And then a few weeks later, she ended up doing that. And the cops came and they took me to her. I didn't want to go, but they took me. Oh, my bad, guys. I had to take a break, but I'm back now. I think I last said that I what do you call it? Yeah, I got my mom placed a restraining order on my dad, like I said, and well, I hated it honestly. There was a while where I wasn't allowed to see my dad. Eventually, she gave in and she ended up letting me see him and talk to him, but that wasn't until way after. I couldn't tell you why, honestly. I guess she just wasn't happy with me being happy. Though, there was a few times that she tried to stop it herself. One time she came to say hi, and oh man, why does it look like that? But she tried to kidnap me, basically. I don't know how else to explain it. She grabbed my arm, and then she tried to drag me to her mom's car, which at that point I was already strong enough to defend myself, not let her grab me, because I mean, I didn't want to go. But it's just, I guess I hope that conveys what I mean by saying, like, how she was. She seemed like she wanted me to suffer at times. I don't know if that was the case, but that's how it felt to me. And then later, after I was living with her for a while, jeez, I don't know how to say this, but her and my dad were, oh my gosh, doing illegal substances together. I won't name which ones, but then she started doing her usual shtick of going crazy, starting fights. Then I told my dad, why do we have to do this? Why can't we just stop this. And he said, we can call the cops, but then we wouldn't see each other for a while. I didn't know what he meant by that at the time, but now I understand that he was doing them too, with her. At the time, I agreed to it, and then that same night, I got taken away. I wanted to go with my grandma, my tia, but that didn't happen, and I ended up going with my mom's cousin, the one that we lived with briefly originally. And after a while of staying with her, I got put with my tia Susan again. And I already kind of hated it being there with my mom, but being there without her was somehow even worse. Because my tia Susan did not like me. I don't think she even cared about me. But she did care about one thing, and that was the paycheck she was getting from me. Did I not get those diamonds before? I'm an idiot. Oh shit. Anyways, she was getting money to take care of me. Now, take care of me is a generous term, because she would barely give me what I needed to skirt by. She'd feed me. She'd buy me clothes with the money she was getting. But if I wanted anything at all, I would have to rely on my mom. Why my mom? Well, that's easy, because I wasn't allowed to see my dad. And we went through multiple caseworkers, but most of the time, if not always, the caseworker was on my mom's side for whatever reason. And I got unsupervised visits, supervised visits and stuff with my mom. I was pretty much required to call her every night, but I only got supervised visits with my dad every so often. It was rare. That didn't really stop me though, because I had a Nintendo Switch at the time, and I would try to communicate with him through Fortnite, because we used to play games together whenever I lived with him. Or I would have the Text Now app on my tablet and talk to him and delete the messages afterwards, because they really didn't want me talking to him. My tia Susan wasn't on my mom's side, really, but she for sure wasn't on my dad's side. And I think I lived with Susan for about a year. And while I was living with her, my parents were required to do lessons, parenting lessons, lessons about substances and parenting and managing anger. My dad would always go to those classes. He would do them. He would pass. My mom, she stopped going after a while. Because you can't help a person that doesn't think they need help. Whether or not my dad thought he needed help is a different story. But he did it because he knew that was the right way to do it. And then we went through a lot of caseworkers, like I said. But we landed on this woman named Misa. And I guess she was on my mom's side originally. But then after a while, like as you would expect, shit, she started to see my mom for who she really was. And my tia Susan wasn't much better. They would both pretty much double team the caseworker and tell her all sorts of bad things. And I'm pretty sure at one point, my tia Susan wanted to adopt me, like, fully. Obviously, for the paycheck, and I'm pretty sure half the reason she said that was to make my parents mad. Because, like I said, she never cared about me. But that ended up never happening. Because my dad told me is that he went to Misa and he said, I've been doing everything that you guys want me to do, and it seems like I'm still not getting any further. So why don't I just give up if I know I'm not gonna win? And somehow that worked. And they held a meeting about who would eventually be getting custody of me. Almost everyone was there. My mom, my dad, my grandma, my tia Susan over the phone, but everyone was there. And I remember I had to leave the room. And while I was out of the room, they told everyone that my dad would be getting custody of me. And when I went back in, I didn't know yet. And I saw my mom crying. And then they told me the good news. And I was ecstatic. I had to try not to burst out into cheer because I saw how sad my mom was. And, as happy as I was, I couldn't make it seem like I didn't want to live with her, even though I didn't. But, yeah, after that, you would hope it'd be smooth sailing. But, of course not with my mom. She called the cops more and then basically did all her old shit without changing much. And that happened until I think it was 2019. My dad got full custody of me. And then in 2022, well, I think it was actually late 2021, our landlord, which it was more so my grandma's house that she was paying for, and she'd lived there for well past my lifetime, probably about 18 years at the time, maybe a little less, but you get the point. And the landlord said that he was going to sell the house to some, like, people who buy properties and stuff, which was kind of shitty for us. We looked for houses and stuff, and I wasn't really involved in that, but then, um, couldn't find anything, and my grandma moved away to Kansas, and she said that she would come back once all the adults, which was my dad, my tia, and my tia's boyfriend, once they found a place for us to live, which seems pretty fair. Except the thing is, my dad wasn't working. He's also convinced that we wouldn't have to move out for some reason. And my tia and her boyfriend, they would argue all the time. It was really bad. My tia was such a responsible person, not before she met her boyfriend, and she was the one making the money pretty much of the house, of me, my grandma, my tia, and my dad. And then she quit her job whenever she met this guy, argued pretty much nonstop with him, even when I was there. This is getting annoying. I might just put it on peaceful. Anyways, yeah. Like I said before, I went homeless after that because I think I remember the day exactly. Me and my dad, the day before, we went to the store and we bought a bunch of stuff to make homemade pizzas. And then that night, I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 with him. And we went to sleep really late that night since I wasn't going to school at this time. It was September 2022. And then we went to sleep at about 4 in the morning, probably. And I woke up at 2, and I woke up in the worst way possible. It was my dad telling me that we had to leave. And I was really, really hoping in my heart that it was some sort of like prank or joke or I don't know, but I was able to get a few of my possessions. I think I got my monitors and my Xbox, and my PlayStation. everything else we left in the house. And when I say everything else, I mean everything. My birth certificate, any birthday gift I'd gotten up to that point, and so on and so forth. But we got kicked out of the house, and we lived in the car for a bit, for about like 3 weeks maybe. We got by doing DoorDash and stuff, and me and my dad and my tia, we helped each other out. And then we had the opportunity to go down to Nebraska to where my other tio lives, my tio Hector. And I was like, I want to do that. So we made a stop in Colorado to, actually, let me say something first. In the car was what little possessions we had, me and my dad, obviously. And then my 2 cats, Bo and Salem. And then my 2 dogs, Puppy, who was small, but he wasn't Puppy. He was like same age as me, pretty much. And then Lola. She was a bigger dog, not too big though. Salem had jumped out whenever we slept near our neighborhood in the car. I guess my dad rolled the window down and she jumped out, but it was fine because she was a bit of an outdoor cat anyways, and she had always managed that neighborhood. There was nice neighbors that would feed her and stuff. I know she's alive to this day. Really miss her though. And then whenever we got to Colorado, something happened and then Bo, he got out. He escaped. And that was a bit more concerning for me because he wasn't really an outdoor cat. Not as much as Salem. He was a scaredy cat. And I knew he wouldn't be able to handle himself in a place he's never even been before. So I was really worried about him. I never got him back. And after Colorado, which was nice by the way, I liked that place. It was Durango. After Colorado, we got to Nebraska. I lived there for about from November to January, and it was pretty annoying over there. I won't go into detail, but I didn't like living there, mainly because of the people who were there. And then eventually we shit. Well, not we, but my dad had a job in Nebraska, so he couldn't just leave. But we decided that I was gonna go live with my tio Adam for a bit, since there was just too much arguing going on over there. So I did that. I went with my grandma. I went to live with tio Adam back in Kansas. And I think I lived there without my dad for about from January to April. And it was really bad. He didn't really feed us a lot. And by that I mean that he made meals every day, but they weren't like the biggest, grandest meals, and I wasn't allowed to have snacks. I would go buy some secretly, obviously, but I wasn't allowed to have them. I got my phone taken, despite not going to school at the time. And, well, I mean, all that really sucked, obviously. But then, whenever my dad moved down, it was better. But it still sucked because, I mean, well, it was me and my dad and my grandma. Oh shit. All sharing a room together. Which, as you can imagine, was not great. It was pretty sucky. And I was back with my cousins. but it just wasn't the same. I didn't like being there without my dad. And even with my dad, it got annoying. Because, I mean, I wasn't a little kid anymore. So, can't really expect much. Either way, we stayed there, me and my dad, from April of 2023 to May of 2024. And obviously, that wasn't too long ago. I met Phoebe, my amazing girlfriend in that year. Sorry if that sounded disingenuous. She really is amazing. I just didn't know how else to phrase it. But I met her in that year. And things have been pretty good since then, honestly. If I want to talk about relationship stuff, that would have to be a separate video. But I think the reason I'm able to forgive, like my mom, for example, is the same reason I'm able to forgive a lot of people. I don't really have room for hate in my heart. Even when I know that people don't like me, or that they don't care for me, or that they did something wrong to me, that's just, I can't hate them for long. Especially if they were my friend beforehand. Like, there's some people right now that I really aren't happy with, or that I'm really hurt by. But if they just apologize once, then I know for a fact I'd forgive them. For better or for worse, I'm just like that. So, I think, as advice for anybody who's still listening, if you are struggling with forgiveness and stuff, then... Hold on, sorry guys. If you're struggling with forgiveness and stuff, then you should just try forgiving. That sounds really, like, backhanded when I say it like that, but I don't know how else to say it. It's the truth. You just can't hate people, and you shouldn't hold grudges. It's not healthy for you. Holding grudges obviously makes you a lot more pessimistic, because you don't believe that these people can change. And pessimism is not a good mindset to have. In fact, it's actually unhealthy. Like, physically unhealthy. I don't want to sound like a nerd, but I recently learned that if you're chronically stressed or pessimistic, then those stress hormones are being fought off by your immune system. And if cancer cells were to invade your immune system, then you wouldn't be able to fight off the cancerous cells, because your immune system would be too busy fighting off the stress hormones. So basically, being stressed... What the hell? How long has this thing been black for? Oh snap. It's probably not good. Why is it not showing? Uh-oh. Can you see? Well, up. That was weird. I'm gonna have to edit this video actually because I don't know how long it was out for. Wait, what? Huh. Well, I guess that's just a problem with the recording then. I guess I have to end the video here. But the main takeaway is that you shouldn't dwell on things that hurt you. I know it's kind of hard, and I think about these things a lot, obviously. But that doesn't mean that they're healthy to hold on to. And I think that you should forgive people that you care about, even people you don't really care for. It's just, it's not worth living your life hating people or being upset with people. But, looks like my recording's kind of fucked up. So, I'm gonna end the video here. But I hope you guys enjoyed that, even if this one was way longer. And honestly, probably a little more boring because it's more personal and not everybody can resonate with it unless you've been through the same similar things. So I hope that one wasn't too, like I was pitying myself. But I'm feeling a lot more comfortable opening up. So thank you guys. And thank you for watching or listening in this case for however long this has been out. But thank you, really. And remember to email me if you want any sort of advice. Even if it's not really something I'm in my field, I'll try my best. So, thank you guys. Have a good day or night. And, I'll probably wait a little bit longer between this video and the next one. So, goodbye, everybody.